continuing our journey through the math tools on the MyndShare application. We've covered numbers and we've covered measurement already. Now we're going to move into geometry. There are 6 tools on the geometry section of the MyndShare application. But one of those tools you're already familiar with because we covered that under the standard section, which is this one on the bottom left of the geometry section. Those are your shapes. Those are just standard shapes. Those are your squares, your triangles, you've got your polygons, you can hand draw, you've got stars, trapezoids, and arrows. So I'm not going to cover that because we covered that in a prior video. But let's take a look now at the top left option on the geometry section, and that would be your reflection. Now I'm not going to pretend to know everything about geometry because I certainly do not, but those of you who are geometry teachers out there will know exactly what to do with this tool. Over here we have all of the coordinates for our shape, our selected object, and then the reflected object. You can see I have my X and my Y coordinates. I can change the shape at the top, and basically what it allows me to do is it allows me to drag my selected shape to a different part of this plane. If I may say, I think it's a Cartesian plane, but I'm sure I'll get comments if I'm wrong on that one. And as I drag that around, you can see what happens to the reflected image. And as I'm doing that, it also changes the coordinates over here. I can do that with a square as well. It shows the reflected and the coordinates. So you can play around with that one. That's the reflection option under the geometry section. The next one is our rotation. So that was showing the reflections. Let me show you what this looks like. This is the rotation option. What this allows me to do is to rotate objects and see how that affects, again, the angle and the point of rotation of the coordinates. So I can see what the angle is and what effect that has on the mirrored object. And again, I can do that with multiple shapes and take a look at what the coordinates, how they're affected as I rotate the object around. The next is the prisms. We got 4 options on the prism tool. I can choose to just put up a square or any one of these other shapes that are up here on this, and I can manipulate them, use them as teaching points. But the true value of this one is coming into this where it says nets. You might be familiar with this on some of those IQ tests or those standardized tests. If I click on one of these nets and I make it larger, it will show you what the image looks like. And you have dotted lines here. I don't know if you can see that, but it has dotted lines around here. And if I hit the play button, it will show you what that object looks like if it were folded upon those dotted lines. I can click and I can drag that over. I can even go into, let's take a look at what this one would look like. Does a little animation for me so I can see what it would look like if it were folded on those dotted lines. Next one is transparent. So if I have a 3D object here, I can see the dotted lines to show me the 3-dimensionality. And the final is opaque. What this allows me to do is to have a colored object put up there. I have various opaque prisms and 3-dimensional objects that I can put on the board. I can even have a cylinder here. All right, so that covers the prisms and the nets and the opaques and the transparencies. The next one is the shapes and angles. This one I think is very valuable, especially if I use it in conjunction with my protractor tool. I can choose a base shape. In this case, I've got 5 different green dots around the edge there. I can actually click on those green dots and I can change the angle. And then if I go back to the video prior and I throw up the protractor tool, I can then work students through measuring the angle of the shape that I've created. And just like in some of those other tools that I showed you, if I click on one of the angles, like number 3, it will show me what that measurement is. Number 2, number 1, or I can use that arrow again, throw it out to the students and have them respond on their Chromebooks. So this is a pretty versatile tool, I think, in the math world if we're measuring different angles of different polygons and shapes. So that is the geometry section of the math tools on the MyndShare application.